tonight is
Recording in progress.
always good. Our guest speaker tonight is Abigail C. Cannon, and she's a senior at the University of North Georgia. I met Abigail and had the opportunity to work with her in the cemetery, Mount Hope Cemetery, last fall as a student with the Appalachian Studies program. And so I know she's a really hard worker, asks a lot of great questions. And tonight she's going to tell us about the hidden music of Lumpkin County. In May of this year, she's going to graduate with a bachelor's in musical arts and a minor in Appalachian Studies. And she's an active leader in the shape note singing community. She plays the mandolin in the Lick Log String Band, which we are shamelessly advertising tonight. If you would like to purchase one or two of these CDs, they're $12 a piece, locally made. She probably even sign one for you, if you're so interested. After Abigail graduates, she plans on attending West Virginia University to pursue a master's degree in ethnomusicology and specializing in American music of the rural South in the early 20th century. So I'm not going to steal any more of her thunder. So let's give a warm welcome to our guest speaker.
Gave me the introduction that I would have given myself. So I think we can go ahead and get started.
Just hold on a second. So sorry.
No worries. While he's doing that, I'll go ahead and just give you a little bit of brief of how this project started and straight from there. So last spring, Dr. Esther Morgan-Ellis, she's a music professor at UNG, offered a course that's called Music of Appalachians. And every time that she offers that class, she has a huge project that the whole class works on together. And there was 7 to 9 of us in that class. And we took 2 decades of the Dahlonega Nugget from 1909 to 1928, something like that, yeah. And just dug through it for any type of musical reference that we could find whatsoever. And I'm going to share with you a little bit of it.
I'm sorry.
Give me time to shake my nerves out.
That's right. You can blame me because I'm the one messing up.
All right.
I'm not yet.
Okay. Just give me the green light.
Okay, go.
In her groundbreaking 1989 study, Ruth Finnegan argued that hidden musicians, such as amateurs, local entertainers, and other unheralded figures are integral to the day-to-day functions of a community, and that examining their activities can upend common assumptions. This study identifies and describes the works of hidden musicians active in Lumpkin County, Georgia, over the course of 2 decades in the early 20th century. It draws primarily upon the county's weekly newspaper, Dahlonega Nugget, in which publisher William Benjamin Townsend supplemented accounts of local activities with national and global news. In this presentation, we will provide historical context for the community and newspaper for surveying musical activity in 4 main categories: social dancing, sacred singing, fiddling and fiddle contests, and African American music.
No.
Just a little introduction about Lumpkin County and how it came to be. Lumpkin County is located in the southern foothills of the Appalachians, about 65 miles northeast of Atlanta, which all of you probably know that. In 1910, Lumpkin County had a population of 5,444, down from 7,488 in 1900. In fact, census records revealed that Lumpkin was shrinking rapidly. With a population of 1,089 in 1910, the city of Dahlonega was the only substantial settlement, while most county residents lived rurally. Lumpkin County continued to shrink over the next 2 decades, reporting 5,240 residents from 1920 and only 4,927 in 1930. The Georgia State Legislature created Lumpkin County in December of 1832. The action by which former Cherokee County was divided into 10 smaller counties followed closely upon the election of Governor Wilson Lumpkin, who won his post on the promise of allocating land parcels in the region to eligible residents via a state lottery. The land in question, taken from the Cherokee Nation, became the site of an early gold rush after Benjamin Parks discovered gold in 1828 or 1829. News of these findings brought a reported 4,000 miners to the area by 1830. Dahlonega was named after the county seat. Dahlonega was named the county seat after lottery fraud threw the ownership of the county's mining settlement, Auraria, into question. At the time, there was nobody living at the site of the future city, and it was some years before the city's name, which is taken from the Cherokee word for yellow, was settled. The two-story brick courthouse, we're all familiar with, which still stands in the central square, was constructed in 1836. Enough gold was unearthed to merit the inclusion of Dahlonega into the Mint Act of 1835, where a branch was to be opened for the coinage of gold only. The Dahlonega branch mint finally opened on February 12, 1838. It was closed by the Confederate Congress on January 19, 1861. We all know what was about to happen. The mint stood vacant for a decade, but when Dahlonega native William P. Price was elected to the U.S. Congress in 1870, he engineered a bill that would hand over ownership to the recently incorporated North Georgia Agricultural College, today UNG. The school, which officially opened in 1873, was the first in the state to admit and graduate female students. North Georgia Agricultural College grew quickly, enrolling over 200 students in its second year. Because NGAC was a land-grant institution, it was required to train male students for military service, and cadets were eligible to commission as officers upon graduation. In 1877, a normal school was opened to train teachers, while the School of Mining Engineering capitalized on local expertise to develop a national reputation. The Dahlonega Nugget was founded in 1890. It was not particularly successful until 7 years later, however, when William Townsend bought the paper and assumed editorialship. Townsend was uneducated and untrained, but his vernacular writing style struck a chord and soon had a national readership. In 1915, the Nugget was recognized as one of the top 3 newspapers in the country. It published one 4-page issue every week. Right now, I'd like to share a video of my band playing for a dance and sautee just before we start into the social dancing section.
Which one?
This one, yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Play it.
Yes.
How to play your circle life. Neither can sit down. And you balance here, just table balance, neighbor swing. Face across. Circle left, 40 places. Very good with sit down. Balance. Wide left and circle. Walking left, circle. And you balance now, balance, swing.
Guy in the red shirt's fine.
Swing it, circle. Partner goes to the note. Wide left. Twilight. So. Alex, it's like. So. Someone's got one challenge and this. It's big there as a whole. I'm not finding anyone else. Sure. One goal. You know. And you balance now. And swing. Right, left.
So Townsend.
Simple hearing hack anyone can.
You done with this one?
Yes.
Hearing hack? Yeah.
Oh, that's not.
So Townsend displayed some ambivalence towards dancing throughout this period in question. On the one hand, he often made light of strict prohibitions, whether from the church or state, and frequently joked about his own fancy steps.
Wait a minute, hold on, sorry, again.
Yes. Since it has gotten cut that ye editor is such a fine dancer, that's Townsend. He reported to readers. Oh, yes, I just said that. He was being inundated with invitations to out-of-state balls, so he must have been quite the stepper. On the other hand, he was strictly censorious in his attitude towards the modern hugging dances, and he seemed to concur with the then President Colonel West that less dancing and more studying would be better served to the college students in their preparation for.
Next.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Most of these I say the important part of the article, but it's just cool to see the clip of it. Okay, see. Townsend, who turned 60 in 1916 and often lamented his advancing age, does not appear to have attended any of these dances on which he reported. In the mid-1920s, he took to make outlandish excuses to explain his absence, ranging from not feeling well enough to dance, to having a corn on one foot, to our dancing slippers failed to reach us in time and we couldn't attend, to we did not get our knee breeches repaired in time.
Yep.
No, go back.
Back.
Yes. The disharmony between social dancing and religion is evident throughout the 2 decades of the Nugget documentation. In a typical entry from 1909, we learned that Brother Tillman stopped dancing by members of the church while he was here, but some of them are going at it again. As was true elsewhere in the rural South, the Saturday night dance existed in constant tension with the Sunday morning service. Although condemned and exorcerated by the faithful, the dance could never be eradicated. The Nugget editors were alive to this tension, and evidence in a report from 1912. Some of them said that there were as many people at the big dance on Saturday as were at church the next day. The night was dark and rainy, making it too muddy for many to go out to church the next day, we suppose. As late as 1928, Townsend noted that one member of a country church in this county was dropped from the roll for dancing. So you see that the country and town religion are different, or that is, they look at it different. Does this work or are you changing it?
I'm changing it, but it should work.
Okay. Yes.
Maybe the computer said.
Yeah, you're right, because that is just a wall.
Right.
In the teens, social dancing was typically informal and not always fashionable. Reports such as this one from 1912 associate dancing with the consumption of alcohol, violent encounters, and general mayhem. And if at any point in time you want me to slow down so you can read more, just holler out. I'll read a portion of this here, though. A blockader with a jug of Mountain Dew appeared at a house where there were no females, and the contents of his vessel soon made all the male occupants so cheerful and happy that they felt like dancing. The chairs were placed to one side of the room, and the fun began. They had no fiddle, and the blockader, having a spiritual feeling about him too, patted and called while the other dances. A 10-stamp mill crushing hard ore couldn't have made much more noise.
That's why Townsend was so good.
She came hit that one.
In 1914, 2 nights of spontaneous dancing in Dahlonega came to a close when a gentleman got mad and whipped his female escort, thus closing the scenes for the night. While the next year, a similar bout of unplanned dancing was at the center of a scandalizing rural escapade featuring the boys and girls of nearby Dawsonville. During the 1920s, social dancing would become not only more common, but more institutionalized and respectable.
Go ahead. Towards me.
Yes.
That was right across the street.
Right.
Yeah.
Where's that?
Right. It's right across the street. Right behind us.
That walks on.
Sorry. Oh, that's all right. No, I appreciate that. Okay. During the 1920s, yes, sorry about that. Okay. The Mountain Inn became the preeminent venue. With 45 rooms, up-to-date amenities, and extensive grounds, the Mountain Inn was Dahlonaga's largest and most comfortable hotel. It seems that the dances held there by proprietor Dr. Craig Arnold were quite large. One in 1923 attracted over 100 visitors, many of whom slept in tents or private residences with no hotel beds were available. Visitors to a 1924 Mountain Inn dance again had to find lodging elsewhere, filling the Tate House and Wigham Hotel. Wigham? I think that's what you said. At a Big Mountain Inn dance in 1927, more than 25 couples were out on the floor at once, occupying all of the available space. Beginning in 1926, dances were also frequently held at the Porter Springs Hotel. I have a little picture of this one, not as great though. This was located at the mineral spa of that name to the north of Dahlonega. Although the spa and hotel had long been in decline by the 1920s, the dances there seem to have drawn large numbers of participants, especially from Gainesville and Atlanta. The decade also saw a great increase in dance at the college. Writing in April of 1925, Townsend noted that they had another dance at the college Friday night, making 2 dances there in less than a week. If parents want their sons to learn and keep up dancing, we know of no institution where there is more dancing done by the students of those there. 6 months later, dancing had been curtailed by President West, who permitted only one such gathering a week and required students to be in their rooms by midnight, meaning that the dance ended at 11:30. Beginning in 1926, regular dances were held in the newly constructed athletic building. This also became the location for an annual military ball, which was an occasion of exceptional pomp. In March of 1927, the hall was beautifully and brilliantly decorated with the national colors, red, white, and blue. A considerable number of distinguished persons from various sections of the state mingled with the crowd, which included a large number of alumni. The proceedings of the 1928 military ball, heralded as the most brilliant social affair of the season, opened with a parade of students in dress uniform on the square, after which a series of boxing and wrestling matches pitted the agricultural students against representatives of other institutions. Dancers then adjourned to the gymnasium where artistic decorations gave its appearance of a fairyland, while a picture show was provided for those who preferred such an entertainment. Guest of honor Colonel O.R. Cole, military science professor at Clemson, joined a crowd of distinguished alumni who received diplomas and went out into the world to make their mark. Although neither the dancing nor the music were ever described in any detail, occasional hints tell us something about what these events looked like and sounded
Is that it? Way behind?
like. The one that's about, let's see, what's he say? No, that's it.
That's it? Okay.
Townsend condemned hugging dances throughout the 1920s, suggesting that dancers had taken to holding each other closely, perhaps while waltzing. In describing his own activity, Townsend made frequent references to doing the cakewalk and the old Virginia backstep.
No? God, wait. What's that? Okay, you tell me when to do it.
While in 1923, he described other dancers as executing steps in response to some of which old Aunt Martha of Washington would have blushed with shame and disgust in her day. The same entry in which Townsend conjured a blushing Martha also included the most comprehensive description of the musical accompaniment, which he described as being provided by usually fiddles, different sized horns, and a long concern that the musician holds with one hand to his mouth and runs the other up and down the stem of it, like something was out of fix and he was sandpapering and adjusting, which seems to have been a trombone. Don't know for sure.
Well,
This instrumentation will perhaps surprise those familiar with a conventional string band lineup, such as that featured in a 1926 dance. Is that one? Yeah, I think so. Will Thompson played the fiddle, Uncle Lum Motes picked the banjo, and Paul Bortfield patted both hands and feet and sang. Fiddle was indeed mentioned frequently in connection with dances, although this is the only reference to the banjo. Other string band instruments, including guitar, mandolin, and bass, are never mentioned, which if you remember from our video, we had all of those instruments. So it's almost like now with the type of social dancing that we have, we've returned to what was the precursor of this point in time that Townsend was describing. Okay, we're about to start on to the sacred singing section of this presentation, and I'd like to share two videos that are pretty special to me. This is the largest singing event that takes place in the United States, at least. It's in Heidegger, Alabama, just a small town, northeast Alabama, where this type of shape note singing out of songbooks is still very much a part of everyday life. And I'll get into more of that presentation.
Can't help it. Can't help it.
There's another video, but we can wait till,
Do you want to go back to the presentation or you want to do the video?
oh, we can go ahead and do this one too.
It's up to you, whatever you want.
Yeah, it's only a minute and 40 seconds. This is a great, this is in the same room, same day, or no, I'm sorry, it was the first video was on Saturday, this was on Sunday, but mostly the same group of people, and this is a good, camera change so you can see how many people are actually there. Notice the sleeping baby.
It never moves. Got it.
Yeah. Sacred singing practices played an important role in the life of Lumpkin County, specifically the form of hymnals and songbooks written using shape notes. The first published shape notes used the 4-shape system to associate pitches with different syllables. Later, a 7-shape notation was developed and became prevalent in the southernmost Appalachian regions. So the two videos we just watched are actually the 4-shape system that's still really popular. So there was like this period where the 7-shape, more gospel music came into play, and there was a big divide in the singing community. So some people wanted to go with the more progressive gospel 7-shape, and some people wanted to stick with the more traditional 4-shape, which is what my preference is, 4-shape. Just to give you a little bit of background on that. Let's see.
So
The sacred singing activities mentioned in the Dahlonega Nugget can be organized into 5 broad categories: singing classes, all-day singings, conventions, camp meetings, and performance. Methodist and Baptist denominations are mentioned regularly throughout this section of newspaper. Townsend rarely reported on activities of the Presbyterian Church, but an issue from 1917 announced a Vesper service that took place monthly. This discovery is unique as it indicated an audience and performers dynamic. The majority of Townsend's sacred music reporting focused on events where everyone was invited and encouraged to be in attendance and participate in music making as a collective. Singing classes were ensembles of vocalists who regularly sang together as a group at a specific church. The Euclid singing class, led by Professor John Anderson, traveled to other churches in Lumpkin County and surrounding counties to give performances and instruction-based singing classes and to compete in conventions. Professor Anderson was a featured soloist on several occasions, often accompanied by his singing class. Anderson traveled independently to congregations in the region to teach their members how to sing. In 1923, he spent 10 days hosting a singing class at the Philippi Church, which I believe is still has services, potentially to ready their singing class to compete in the recently announced Lumpkin County Convention. Go ahead and change that sound. In this context, the term convention is used to describe an all-day event where competing singing classes perform for a panel of judges. Community members were invited to listen in. So there's not much of this activity still going on in the singing community, not as far as like competitions go. It's much more so just to get together and sing for the purpose of singing together. All-day singings, however, pertains to a participatory music experience where everyone is invited to join in. Townsend regularly encouraged his readers to send in announcements for singings free of charge. Generally, he announced the day and time of the singing, and after the event, he reported on the turnout. He reported on an all-day singing event at Damascus where some 500 or 600 people at the singing were at the singing at Damascus, which that the videos that we watched, like I said, was one of the biggest ones in the United States, and there was maybe 250 people there. So that was 3 times as many people 100 years ago. It's awesome. In addition to music making, a ritual referred to as dinner on the grounds, some of you may be familiar with that term, immediately followed after the morning session of singing was finished. Sharing a meal together was an important part of the fellowship experience, and we still do this. We can infer that seven-shape singing was the contemporary practice for sacred vocal music in Lumpkin County. Townsend referred to the old-time 4-note books that an Uncle Mar Grizzle used while leading at his singing event. He also does not employ the word shape, which could be an indication that all music notation in the area was written in the shape note style. While reporting on construction details of the Enon Church, Townsend lists songbooks as an item in preparation for an upcoming order alongside an order for heater installation.
I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong slide, I think. Where should I be?
There, it's a smaller.
This one?
And Townsend is, yes, talking about the
Okay.
preparations, yes. This announcement tells us that the songbooks held a high value in the community, were willing to spend money on it, and that Townsend knew his readers would be thankful for this news. Okay, on to the fiddling section. On August 28th, 1909, at 10 a.m. in the morning, the 5th Annual Fiddlers Convention of Lumpkin County was convened in a public park. Although the convention was ultimately declared a success, uncertainty about the event's viability and low turnout among competitors hinted at a possible decline in this type of activity. Indeed, the 1909 convention would turn out to be the last of its era. All efforts in the ensuing decade to organize a similar gathering met with failure. Whether due to declining population or change in musical tastes, fiddling was a vanishing tradition in the North Georgia foothills. Townsend, who expressed a nostalgic fondness for the fiddle, described it as sweet, good, old-time music, and lamented that the disappearance of fiddlers and decline of fiddling conventions. This contradicts contemporary accounts in the Atlanta Constitution, which suggests that the hills were bristling with fiddlers. Just 2 months before the 1909 Fiddlers Convention of Lumpkin County, Townsend announced that the event was to be canceled. For the reason of so many calls have been made on our citizens during the past month for money for various purposes, such as for the sick and afflicted, home missions, foreign missions, preacher salaries, preacher visits, prizes for school children, banquets, monuments, athletics, and the Lord only knows what else. The following week, however, Townsend reported that the convention was back on. And after some of our citizens requested us to have it, so they may be able to see our country friends come to town and all have one more happy day. The ensuing weeks saw announcements concerning the contest categories, pleas for prize money, citations of upstanding citizens who had made contributions, and reports from those who had written with their plans to attend. The program, published a week in advance, indicated the first and second prizes would be given for Best Fiddler, $5, and Best Lady Fiddler, $5, and Best Singing Class, $10 to $5. A spelling competition was also held with separate categories for town and country students divided into two age groups, under 11 and 6 through 18. While it was reported that hundreds of people were here from this and various other counties and state, and everyone enjoyed and behaved themselves. You see why he had national attention. It's just so funny with sports. Only the men's fiddling contest proved competitive, attracting 10 participants who each played two tunes.
I'm behind you or in front of you. Where should I be?
1910 convention is next.
This?
Yep.
Okay.
Both first and second prize were awarded for their sole female fiddler, Miss William Jackson. The 1910 convention was canceled 2 months in advance. Townsend blamed social strife. Politics seemed to be all that can be talked about and too much confusion for people to meet together and enjoy themselves. In 1912, a parallel course of events unfolded. A convention scheduled for Saturday, August 17th, at which cash prizes would be offered for both fiddling and singing as usual, was canceled on account of a sufficient amount of money not being sent in for the prizes. Townsend offered to publish the names of political candidates who pledged prize money with the idea that such an action would win their support. Does not seem to have carried enough appeal. A few lackluster calls for subscriptions in 1914, which again contained a direct apparel to political candidates, suggested that a convention was in the works for the third Sunday in August, but there is no evidence that this took place. In 1915, Townsend mused that if he continued to feel as fit as he had been in recent days, he would aim to call a fiddlers and singing convention so everyone can enjoy themselves one more time in that good old town of Dahlonega. While in 1917, he elicited only the comment that if it wasn't for the war, we would have another old-time fiddlers convention. How would you like it? A convention planned for the first Saturday in August in 1918 was again canceled. Several weeks after Townsend ran a rather petulant article in which he published the names of subscribers to a convention. A number of years ago, when the citizens all pulled together, causing the town to prosper, everybody to be in peace and happy. Throughout the teens, therefore, the Dahlonega Fiddlers Convention was more literary motif than actual event. There were no mentions of fiddlers conventions after 1918, hypothetical or otherwise. Although fiddling in Lumpkin County might have declined to the point where large conventions were no longer feasible, it retained enough popular appeal to serve political candidates on the campaign trail. As Peter LaChapelle had demonstrated, Southern politicians have used fiddle music to attract crowds and convey a populist image since at least 1878, where Bob Taylor played the fiddle after speeches in his pursuit of a congressional seat representing his district of East Tennessee. While it may be true, as LaChapelle claims, that individuals in pursuit of national office were no longer fiddling after Taylor's death in 1912, Townsend reports in 1928 that Lumpkin County Sheriff candidate John Anderson carries his fiddle and while out through the country gives campaign musical entertainments. Townsend suggests that this gave him an edge over his non-musical competitors. LaChapelle also documents the employment of string bands by political campaigns in the early 20th century, again to convey a populist message. The Nugget contains two early examples of this practice. In 1914, Dr. Arnold, a candidate for the state legislature, visited Nimblewell and Mill Creek with his string band to furnish music before speaking. Although successful in the first instance, his ruse backfired in the second when the crowd almost drove away one of his band members because he had been going with the revenue officers. 10 years later, Colonel Sam Brown of Lawrenceville appeared with a string band as he campaigned for a seat in Congress. Brown used the band to preface an afternoon address and then offered an evening concert at which he also spoke. Townsend indicated admiration for the ingenuity by which Brown convinced audience members to pay 25 cents admission to a campaign event and paid heavy compliments to the band, which appears to have included Gid Tanner, later to record with the Skillet Lickers. Indeed, the three other musicians mentioned may have included Riley Puckett or other Tanner collaborators from the era. Okay, this is moving on to our last section here, the African American music making. And Lumpkin County. Throughout our double-decade analysis of the Dahlonega Nugget, Townsend deliberately illustrates separate and meagerly depicts an equal racial divide in Lumpkin County and surrounding counties. State-mandated segregation laws were ruled constitutional under the Supreme Court case Plessy versus Ferguson, just 12 years prior to the first issue in our body of research from the Dahlonega Nugget. Over the span of 20 years writing in the newspaper, Townsend mentions fewer than 25 local events pertaining to African American music making. It is imperative that we consider the stringent and prevailing white societal dominance while analyzing this primary source. Townsend, Caucasian male, was the primary author and editor of the Nugget. His personal interest in African American music making centered around Lumpkin County's white community involvement. Thus, his minimal reports of African American music making are glimpses into a community through an outside lens. It is crucial to note that primary source applies only a portion of our intended research, and consulting additional sources will be necessary to provide a proper historical summary of Lumpkin County's African American music. The majority of Townsend's reports highlight sacred music events within the African American community. He acknowledged the Hickory Grove Church and School in several issues where, in less flattering language, he hints at the exceptional music making of Lumpkin County's primary African American Christian congregation. Most of his reports of African American singings include that they were observed by intelligent members of the white community. I think that's that name. Just 2 events of secular African American music making earned Townsend's recognition. Yeah, that's one of them. The Hickory Grove Church was founded in 1880 and continues to operate under the name Hickory Grove Christian Methodist Episcopal as a house of worship in the present. Through Townsend's report alone, the original denomination of this African American church is unclear. Townsend briefly summarized his knowledge of Lumpkin County's African American religious history when he announced the installation of electricity in the African American Baptist Church in an issue from the summer of 1928. He stated that the Baptist Church was the only house of worship for African Americans in Lumpkin County because the older Methodist building had rotted down. The Baptist Church had just 14 registered members, and there was only one proclaimed Methodist in the town when Townsend wrote this article. He claimed that the first African American church in Lumpkin County was located near Crown Mountain, but didn't specify a denomination. We can surmise this location near Crown Mountain may have been the rotted down Methodist building that Townsend mentioned prior.
Wait, what? I'm lost. Is this? Where are we?
Putting in the new poles and putting them online. That's yes. Getting the electricity, the church. I don't think we're just there.
One more? Back the other way?
Yes, yes. That's good. It is probable that this church was the only place of worship for enslaved African Americans, as Townsend stated. All of the other colored of the town met and worshiped together up to and during the Civil War. I believe we can switch to the next one. In 1925, Hickory Grove's African American singing class competed against other African American singing schools from Franklin and Stevens counties. Hickory Grove was announced the winner of the contest. Townsend stated that this event took place in Toccoa in Stevens County. There was a large and multiracial audience in attendance to hear the singing schools compete. Townsend suggests that in order to musically compete with African American church music, the white churches hire music instructors to teach singing classes to their congregations. This article is evidence that Townsend recognized the unique musicianship present in the African American church, so much so that the white community should take advice from the instructional methods used by the African Americans to heighten their own singing abilities. The Hickory Grove Church and School put on a 2-night music event where both performances were well received with a full audience from members of both African American and white communities. Hickory Grove School hosted 2 nights of musical entertainment with members. I just read that, sorry. The performance was so popular that the one-room building ran out of seating and an overflow of audience members stood to hear the music. When segregation was an enforced social convention, African Americans were required to give up their seat in unspecified public spaces if there was a white person without a place to sit. Townsend recognized that the audacious juxtaposed image of white community members filling a space that was specifically labeled for African American community members. Although there is an element of admiration in the actions from the white community, their actions were ultimately disrespectful towards the African American community. Later in this excerpt, Townsend presented a reversed scenario to his readers. Yes, that's it. Suppose this race was to go to the white people's entertainments and occupy seats and let others stand up. What would be said or done about that? It is obvious through his sympathetic gestures that Townsend saw the racial inequality in Lumpkin County. Although Townsend most likely derived his opinion from good intentions, viewing a specific group of people as helpless only perpetuates the us and them mentality for the fortified racial division. And on to our conclusion. Our 20-year analysis of the Dahlonega Nugget has provided great insight into North Georgia's cultural focus on community music making. It appears that participatory music events were most popular and much more popular than structured performances, like the only one we found in 20 years was a Vesper service at the Presbyterian Church. Although the Dahlonega Nugget was an outsider's interpretation of African American music activities, there is enough information provided that has allowed us to ask for more specific questions that will help us to find sources within the African American community. We look forward to sharing those findings when our research is complete. Thank you. Questions you have for me, I will do my best to answer. Or not.
The next degree, what will you do?
After I finish at West Virginia, I would like to continue with this type of research and focus on like specific communities, small niches of music, and figure out what's out there, how people make music together, and figure out how we can bring that back to society today.
The research.
Yes, ma'am.
That was the Victory House tie-in with your research.
It was the building that we were able to use for the course that we all got together and met with. And we also are able to use it for our local singings that we use, or that we have, which everybody in the community is invited to come sing. So
What are they doing with it now? Aren't they doing
I
something?
think they're replacing all of the rotted wood on the exterior.
Hmm.
That's what it looks like.
Let's put the roof.
Yeah.
That's the same kind of thing that the Foxfire Museum. Have you ever been up there?
I have not yet, no, but I plan to go.
They talk about some kind of special thing.
Well, it was definitely the most popular type of singing in really all of North Georgia, not just Lumpkin County, for the better half of the 20th century. So.
In the fifties and sixties, Gainesville, Cleveland, Dahlonega, all had square dances on Saturday night. Some of them got a little bit rowdy.
Sunday morning church service after 8:30. That is
I
believable.
remember seeing on YouTube, and I don't know when it was, but it was a video of the old mountain music and park, the mountain music park, or whatever. You know, up on top of Crown Well, at the top there, you know, where it's currently where that rehab center is.
Underneath the hospital.
Yeah, below the hospital there. There was a big sort of venue there. It was an outdoor stage and well, I think it was indoor too, even back then. I never went to it, but it was really interesting. It was mountain, I think it was called Mountain Music Park.
Yeah, Mountain Music Park.
That's it. It was there later, yeah. 50s, it was there in
90s, yeah.
90s, probably before that too.
Yeah, before.
Yeah, probably that must look like it was probably in the video I saw looked like it was maybe in the fifties or something, you know, I mean, it's pretty early.
It was kind of down.
Hmm?
I said it didn't last too long after the nineties, because we moved there
It
pretty
didn't
fast.
last too long after, yeah, but I think it started a long time before.
Yeah, long time before.
Well,
With having events because the neighbors can come.
Yeah.
that's possible.
It's pretty loud, it's pretty rowdy.
I'm not sure if you all are familiar, but all of the issues of the Dahlonega Nugget are digitized now. So you can go on to the website and read all the way back to 1890. So like that would be something definitely worth looking into.
Can you search
figuring out.
our keywords?
You sure can.
Yeah, wow. That's cool.
You have to open up each individual page, but they're only 4 pages long, so
Yeah.
it's some digging, but it's possible.
Yeah. 2,000 pages a year.
That,
That's a
yes,
good number of searches.
yes.
Well, that's what it means.
That's what was so great about having 9 people in our classes. We were all assigned different sections of the 20 years, so we were all responsible for going and digging. Like I think we each had 3 or 4 years. So that was enough for a semester.
What about the West Virginia, where's that located, West Virginia school?
It's West Virginia University, Morgantown or Morganton. I don't know how they pronounce it yet, but I'll find out. Morgantown.
You know, we have a connection with Morganton, although most people wouldn't realize, that's the town where Matthew Stevenson was born in. But at that time, it was only Virginia, it hadn't been.
Yeah, it was a county. That's right.
There's a big, old time music jam up there in West Virginia.
Yes, I'm looking forward to learning more about that.
But
Oh, yeah. Yes, I hope to be there next summer.
If there's no more questions, we'd like to thank Abigail for coming out tonight. Give her a nice Walmart gift card, which can be. All right.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yes.
Greg, would you like to give us testimony on that? You got